Oh, snap. We're back at it. We're back in the studio, man. How's it going, everybody? We're live on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all of those fun places. I hope you're all doing well. I just got back from Benzinga in Chicago, and it was an experience, to say the least. I'll probably talk about that and more. The main focus of today's episode is going to be a company that we recently discussed walking back their money laundering claims. We're going to get into that, folks. If you are tuning into this after the fact and you're wondering, Cole, why the hell? When did you plan out this live stream? I didn't. I just, this is spur of the moment, just decided to hop on live. Here I am, bing, bang, boom. But I will say tomorrow at 4 p.m., we will be discussing, I'll be sitting down with Livy McKay, who's been on the show in the past. She is launching an online marketplace where she sells federally legal cannabis, otherwise what some people call THCA flower. I'm looking at the Instagram stream. I don't know if we're frozen right now or not, but that's okay. Give me a comment if you can drop below. We are live right now. If you can drop your comment below. Can y'all hear me? I do see some comments are coming in from my friend Aaron, aka Guapo. Wait a minute. Did I just fuck that up? I fucked that up. That is, who knows? Anyways, people are saying they hear me. They say two dope dudes, which I gotta check out. Not live on Instagram. What the fuck? All right, Instagram. I guess Instagram doesn't get to watch this live stream. That's okay. Thank you everybody for checking that for me. I do appreciate it. The Dank Informers tuning in. He says, "Who's her lawyer?" That's a fun, tune in tomorrow. You can ask that question. We will be live. And so just like this, I can display your comments. I can even let you call in live. Dank, I know you don't like to show your face, so you don't have to turn your camera on. You can call in, and sometimes we take questions on the show. And I think tomorrow would be a good one for just that. Okay, I will say, check out the Two Dope Dudes podcast. Apparently, they only made fun of Benzinga a little. We'll be talking about Benzinga, money laundering accusations being walked back, and so much more in this episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
All right, let's do it. And again, some good questions coming in. Somebody just asked, what is the topic for tomorrow? The topic for tomorrow is we're sitting down with Livy McKay. She is launching an online marketplace where she is selling federally legal cannabis, compliant with the Farm Bill, of course. And, to this question, why is there no COAs on Livy's website? I don't know if that is true. First of all, let's go to it really quick. I think it's discoveryourcolor.co. And regardless of whether or not it's true, happy to ask that question on the podcast tomorrow. Feel free to drop by and drop your comments, questions, and all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm looking at the website right now, and nothing is standing out to me. But from what I understand, it is all lab tested, or at least this is what the website says. I just did a search of COA, and it says that you should get a COA detailing active ingredients. Is this? I don't know. I'm trying to do this on the fly. But Dank just said, just checked it. No COAs are found despite the claims that products are tested. Yeah, so we'll definitely dive into that. And talk about all that. Dank also says, and I got a pot of gold to sell you. Oops, it's just rice in a bag. Funny stuff. Well, okay. Let's talk about our first story today, which is the title of this episode. First of all, if you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, go back and check out our last episode at thecolememo.com. It's episode 207. And the title of that episode was cannabis companies are laundering money, right? So it's kind of an interesting thing that I saw play out on one of my favorite cannabis news shows, The Dales Report, and we played some clips and talked about it on the air. So again, if you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about, check out episode 207. But Anthony, who again, I'll be talking about Benzinga here in just a second. Anthony Varell, who is a co-host who I actually got the opportunity to meet at Benzinga, which was super cool. Kind of little fangirl moment for me, if you will. Got so excited that I forgot to ask for a picture, but I was able to say hi and tell at least Shad that I was a big fan of what they're doing and hope they keep up the good work. So on June 5th, which I believe this was released, I think the day before, I think this was released on June 4th. On June 5th, though, Anthony said, as per our segment yesterday regarding Curaleaf, the matter has been clarified and in line with my response on stream. So he links this new press release from MMJ Biopharma. And the headline here is they've clarified remarks regarding Curaleaf and international cannabis distribution. They basically are clarifying from that May 28th press release that's the topic of discussion in episode 207. They basically say that they wish to clarify that they do not have evidence that Curaleaf Holdings is exporting Schedule 1 cannabis products from within the United States to international markets. Any prior public commentary that may have suggested direct exportation of such products from the United States by Curaleaf was not intended to allege unlawful conduct by the company. They said their original press release was aimed to highlight broader inconsistencies in federal cannabis enforcement policies where companies operating in international markets under various legal frameworks appear to have less scrutiny than federally compliant pharmaceutical research efforts, such as those by MMJ Biopharma. They acknowledge that Curaleaf has disclosed in public filings that its international operations involve cannabis cultivation and distribution through licensed foreign subsidiaries, including those in Canada and Europe. These disclosures also include the legal disclaimer that marijuana remains a Schedule 1 substance under U.S. federal law and that its operations may not be compliant with international treaty obligations, particularly those enforced by the United Nations Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. MMJ Biopharma says they remain committed to advocating for consistent science-based federal cannabis policy and will continue to pursue its mission of delivering FDA-authorized cannabinoid-based therapies for patients suffering from Huntington's disease and multiple sclerosis. I can't say that, otherwise known as MS. They say they regret any confusion or mischaracterization our prior statements may have caused and thank Curaleaf for the opportunity to clarify the record. So, what do you think about that? They walk back their statements. Like I said, I played some clips in episode 207. They seemed very confident about those allegations at the time, but definitely walked all of that back. And I thought that was really interesting and really important for me to share with all of you because, want to make sure that we're sharing, I guess, what people are saying. And in this case, they walked back their comments. And I'm just curious, totally unrelated. Do you pronounce it cannabinoid or cannabinoid? Do you pronounce it Caribbean or Caribbean? Stupid joke. I'm sorry. Just trying to provide some levity. I think I saw some more comments coming in. And let's see, because there is a lot to talk about. Someone said, Genetic Memory Farms, thank you for tuning in. They said, why would this need to be walked back? It's pretty obvious that hemp is being used to allow cannabis to avoid 280E. Well, you now know that it didn't have to do with that. It had more so to do with some of the allegations they made on the show. Once again, Guapo, thank you for dropping comments. And if you guys haven't already, please smash that like button and subscribe. And I don't know if we already displayed this comment from the Dank Informer, but I'll display it again. They said, just checked it, no COAs. I think we actually did display that comment. So, Dank, I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate the fact that apparently you saw me at Benzinga but you didn't say hi to me, which I get. Again, you're anonymous, so you want to keep that anonymity. Um, but I guess it was cool to be in the same room with you, even though I didn't know when that was, which is an interesting thing. Um, Interesting feeling. But anyways, Benzinga. Benzinga was cool. It was in Chicago. In case you don't know what Benzinga is, it's really fun to say. Benzinga, Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference. So it's, to put it shortly, if you couldn't have surmised by that, it's a place you go, you network, you try to get capital if you're in the cannabis industry, and it's a place I go if you want to, connect with some of the power players in the cannabis industry. And I cannot stress enough that it is, I've seen it get some flack online. People are like, "Oh, Benzinga." I think I saw somebody call it Menzinga the other day. Plenty of women there. There was like an invest in her lounge. Anyways, though, not going to get into that. It's awesome. It really is awesome. And my stance on well, I don't want to assume, but I can be, let's say, pragmatic or let me think of other ways to describe myself and how I approach this topic. Maybe you guys have some comments. Oh, there were more comments. Someone said, we'll get to that here in a second. We'll get to those in a second. He said, I bet you feel like the time when you dropped Chillinois rolling papers on my table at Urban Legends without saying a word. Damn, I did that. I feel bad. I feel bad that I didn't even say hi. I don't know. I, yeah, I don't know. I was probably high, which is why I probably didn't say hi. They say Benzinga only 1K a ticket. Whoa, I didn't know that. Well, makes sense, I guess. If you're gonna be there, you're probably in a cannabis company and you're probably looking for capital. I guess if you have disposable income and that's an option for you, I would highly, and you really like, want to be able to connect with some of these people, I would highly recommend going there because like last few years I've run into people like, speaking of Curaleaf, I got on the same elevator as Curaleaf's Boris Jordan, who told me, asked me, "Are you the person that smells like weed right now?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, that's me," because I had like multiple joints rolled up and I had been smoking that day. And I got on the right elevator. It was kind of cool. I invited him onto the podcast and I never heard back. Somebody just commented and said Jim Belushi last year. Yeah, I had an interesting back and forth with Jim Belushi, which was fun. I didn't expect to have. I just expected to ask a question, and then he kind of like pitched it back to me. And if you haven't seen that, you might be able to find it on colememo.com. If you search up Jim Belushi on colememo.com, I'll display it on my screen right now. If you search it up, you can see episode 131, a candid discussion with Jim Belushi. And yeah, that's hard to believe. That was last year. Thank you for the reminder on that. Two Dope Dude says classic Cole with Belushi. Yeah, that was a good question. Genetic Memory Farms asked, my question is, who gets the 1K? Probably Benzinga. Think of it as a finder's fee. Because again, you have like open access to all of these people. Pretty open access. Some of the CEOs or executives, they like find a way to sneak back. Like, for example, I was within I about said spitting distance. I don't know. I've never even heard that phrase before, but I mean, it applies. I could have spit on Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. That's how close I was on him. Would I have done that? No, because I respect him. But I was very close to him. I was able to get some really good pictures that I posted a while ago. And that is another figure where actually my friend Brad Spearson from grownin.com, someone said, should you have? Maybe. My friend Brad Spearson from grownin.com actually tried to follow Governor Pritzker off stage and ask him a question, and he was briefly detained, which, not officially, not by like any officials, but people like kind of surrounded him. Were like, whoa, 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 Don't come back here type of thing. Some people are like that. Curaleaf, Boris Jordan, he seemed to be pretty protected. Like I tried to ask I asked a person that was obviously his assistant, "Hey, are you Boris's assistant? I was gonna ask, I'd like to have him on the show." And he looked at me very firmly and said, well, he looked me up and down. He went, "No." And I was like, "All right, dude." Ended up getting on an elevator with Boris and gave him my card, and, like I said, that never pulled through, but that's okay, there'll be another day for that, whenever he's ready, we'll have him on the show, so that he can join the likes of the other cannabis executives that I've met at Benzinga, including Charlie Bachtel. Like, that's how I landed the Charlie Bachtel interview. I saw Charlie, he was talking to somebody else. Sometimes you just gotta kinda weasel your way into a conversation. I said, "Hey, Charlie, how's it going? I'm Cole. I'd like to invite you onto my podcast. I don't mean to take up much of your time. Here's my card." And he actually recognized me from my other podcast. He said, well, I think he mentions that on the podcast as well, that he remembers my old podcast. And it was cool. We had a really good conversation. I ended up missing Charlie this year. He was there on Monday. I didn't make it to Monday. I should have, but just other things came up in my life and I wasn't able to make it on Monday. That was the plan, though. I was going to be there for 2 days. Generally speaking, it's about 2 days. And like I said, just to close the loop on Benzinga, it's a good little experience. And somebody, again, when you ask who gets the 1K, I think it's Benzinga, probably, maybe. I don't know how they split the money. I don't really know the answer to your question, but just to guess, I think it's sort of like a finder's fee because, again, you're kind of in the room with open access to a lot of big people in the space. And, it's not often that you get all those people in one room. So, again, that's Benzinga. I guess I can show some pictures from Benzinga. Yesterday, I got my hands on Space Weed. It was kind of cool. I had this person on the podcast back in the day from a brand that was going to launch in Illinois called Chicago Kush. Some of you may remember them. And I was chatting with him. His name is Fabian. And we were talking about a lot of different things, how the years have flown, all that good stuff. And I said, I don't remember how it came up, but I said, I've always wanted to try space weed. I had seen some posts about space weed, and I had no idea that Fabian actually like works with space weed in some capacity. And he hooked me up. Apparently, space weed is selling THCA flower now. And so I got this little sample of green crack. I haven't tried it yet. But it does smell and look pretty amazing, as you can see on my screen right now. I can show a few pictures that I captured. I was going to take more pictures, but just ultimately didn't. Somebody asked, are those like Jeters? No. Let me show you what space weed seems to be about. So I'm Googling space weed. Apparently it's flash frozen cured cannabis. And the image that really caught my attention, let me see if I can find it here. Space weed comparison. Yeah, here we go. I had seen this image along with several other videos and such. And I don't know if space weed is literally called space weed because it takes up more space, but I was talking to one of my friends about that, and that was our only guess. Like at first I thought it was called space weed because it puts you in space, but no, I think it literally just takes up more space. So if you're seeing here on the right side of my screen, on the left, this jar is space weed. And then on the right, it's traditional. So it's like flash frozen cured. It's the same weight as they say here, but 2 times the volume. So I've just heard like good things with regard to the or the taste rather. Apparently, since it's like flash frozen, that it's like super fucking flavorful and blah blah blah. Not again, I don't know. I don't know exactly. I'm gonna have the dudes on from Space Weed to talk more about like what separates them. But I would just say, I guess if you're looking to learn more, Google Space Weed, and I think their website is spaceweedusa.com, and you can literally buy some yourself and have it shipped to your door because they're selling it as THCA hemp flower, which we'll loop back around to that subject here in a second. Somebody
commented and said, "When I worked for JB Pritzker's campaign, he would come to my office in Joliet for photo opportunities because a good crowd would always turn out. He is fairly popular for a state governor." Two Dope Dude said, "How many people were there?" That's a good question. I feel like there were less than years past, but I don't actually know. I don't know if I heard a head count. But I felt like there were less people than years past, but it was like pretty packed in certain situations. Like I was gonna try to attend a session on price compression in Michigan, which you may know that I find that subject very interesting. In fact, I hope to have an economist on here in next week to talk about that very concept because I talk about it all the time, but I always covet it with I'm not an economist, so I don't fucking know. And so we're getting an economist on. Let's talk about it. Um, all right. So Genetic Memory Farm says, so it is freeze dried weed like Spaceman ice cream. I don't, yeah, I guess so. I did go and I was just about to display photos. So here we go. We can look at some photos before we start to wrap. I went to this panel with Kyle Kazan, who is the CEO of Glass House Brands, which is, you may have heard of them from California. Bill Marachnik, I think I'm pronouncing that right. He is from Charlotte's Web. If you guys are familiar with Charlotte's Web, the cannabis medicine that I guess was used by Charlotte Figge. I was also told that that is why the Farm Bill does and did add consumable cannabinoids to the definition of hemp, mostly because of Charlotte Figge, and then other people found ways to produce other consumable cannabinoids. Before that, in 2014, it was the Industrial Hemp Farming Act, and then in 2018, they dropped that industrial prefix, added some consumable cannabinoids, and here we are. Here we are. I wanted to mention something about that. Damn it. I hope it comes back to me. Anyways, Jim Higdon from Cornbread Hemp was on, who will be on the show next week. So stay tuned for that. Christy Palmer, and then the moderator was Craig Small. That was a good one. I saw there was a comment about this. This discussion was between Todd Harrison, Weldon Angelos, and Kim Rivers, who are pictured here. Weldon actually got pardoned by President Donald Trump in 2017, I believe, serving a cannabis offense, and I guess has since gone to the White House and is friends with the new pardon czar that's currently serving and was appointed by or rather by President Trump. And yeah, it was an interesting conversation. They mostly talked about federal reform, and basically the takeaway was that Donald Trump says promises made, promises kept, and that while it didn't happen in the first 100 days, nothing happened cannabis related in the first 100 days. Kim Rivers specifically said she's confident that that something will happen. And I think it's notable to mention, I don't remember the exact details, but from what I understand, Kim Rivers is the reason that Donald Trump tweeted about cannabis in the lead up to the election, specifically rescheduling. And he also endorsed or basically said that he was going to vote for Amendment 3, which would have created an adult use tax and regulate structure in the state of Florida. As we know, that ended up not coming to pass. Yeah, so it was overall a really interesting discussion. Someone asked, did Jungle K smell good? And they were asking that because look at that. That's me with Jungle K, who's been on the podcast in the past. I believe he's briefly featured in my mini documentary, which you can watch now at colememo.com/mini-doc. I also ran into my friend Dennis from Mycopreneur. And if you're not familiar with him, he is the person that inspired me to do those cannabis industry billionaire satirical reels. He makes reels like that all the time. They're really fucking funny. He is a really smart and kind person. And like I said, he has inspired me in many different ways. But those two cannabis industry billionaire reels are definitely like just directly inspired by his work. In fact, oftentimes I say I copied off of him because it was meant to be an ode to his stylings with my own little personal touch on the issue. Two Dope Dude says Jungle K is the best. Genetic Memory Farms says weird that cannabis industry was supposed to be addressing social equity, but those panels on that stage all look pretty monochromatic. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely some white people walking around. Yeah, no, social equity was a discussion. I don't know. It's I personally think that social equity was almost used as a pawn, almost like medical, like I'm not saying that there isn't medical utility to cannabis. I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that some people did use that to get their foot in the door for adult use cannabis. And look, I'm not knocking that specifically, the medical cannabis thing, but I do believe that um that's another thing that actually Illinois Representative LaShawn Ford says in my mini documentary that these cannabis companies push to legalize it just a little bit so that they could basically have control over this new market. So I don't know. I think that look, let me just put it this way: is it a coincidence that the way that social equity is structured is well, it's structured right it seems to have been inspired by the business models in which all of these cannabis companies seem to thrive in. And maybe thrive in is not exactly accurate because not all, I think one of them is profitable. Let's say that they do not prefer markets like Michigan or Oregon because there's more competition and then the prices fall and then people go out of business. And look, if I were in business, I would probably feel if I had any aspirations to get into the business, if I were in business, I might feel the same way. I like to say that a lot, because I knock against limited licensing, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that if I were in the biz or wanted to be in the biz, maybe I would feel differently about open licensing. The thing about limited licensing rather, that just leaves a bad taste in my mouth is the fact that the primary enforcement mechanism for anybody that doesn't have a license is the criminal law. And so my question is, if we were supposed to have addressed the disproportionate impact that the war on drugs has had in some of these communities or on basically all of us, how can we be claiming to right those wrongs if we're continuing that exact pattern for anybody that doesn't have a license? And in fact, another thing, I didn't mean to make this a Cole's mini doc plug promo episode, but it's good. And that's why I point to it all the time. The arrests primarily continue related to cannabis in the areas that they always have. And it has to do with unlicensed sales. See, you know, in most other contexts, like if you set up a lemonade stand or something, they're not calling in the police. If you're really like, if you got a really crazy lemonade stand going, like they might issue a notice to you and be like, hey, you need to get a food license. But they're not going to call the police on you. And that is the big difference. So, all right, folks, we're getting some hot comments in. Genetic Memory Farms says, wait, you mean capitalists in the cannabis industry use people like patients and social equity participants to capture the cannabis market in Illinois? I'm shocked and appalled. I am detecting some sarcasm in that comment, and I love it. I love it. Someone said corporatists. Two Dope Dudes says corporatists, companies that only do what the state allows them to. Yeah. I will say, one of my big takeaways from Benzinga this year is that there wasn't so much hemp hate. I thought that was interesting. There were panels, entire panels, a few panels, 2, I think, that at least I was able to attend, that were dedicated to the subject of hemp and how great it is and how, there are certainly some issues, but we can resolve those issues by requiring testing, labeling, and age gating. Um, Interestingly, there was some debate on the age gating. Not anybody saying that there shouldn't. Well, basically one of the points that somebody made was like the age gating should be a state by state thing, and I thought that was interesting. Hey, my take on age gating is that age gating, the debate about age gating, should be about the age. What is an adult? Is it 18 or is it 21? Right? It seems like with cigarettes and alcohol, we've decided that an age of an adult is 21, which seems silly. Uh, so yeah, pick your age. But there needs to be an age gate, I think, and I don't think it should be a hard age gate. I think that in the case of Charlotte Figge, for example, or other children that might need medical cannabis, I have a family member that I believe uh, she's a child and she had to use medical cannabis. I'm not saying that she shouldn't have been able to or that any kids should not be able to. I think that just for like over the counter adult use, there should be an age gate. Medical, that's a different discussion. There's not really a one size fits all approach to that topic. So, and this is a good comment. This is a really good point. Age restriction is done by state. For example, in Wisconsin, a kid under 21 can drink with their parents, but not in Illinois. I think I even heard the same thing about Nolens, Louisiana. I believe in Louisiana, as long, maybe the kid has to be 16 or 18. Maybe that's what it is. I think if the kid is 18, if your kid is 18, as a parent, you can, in a restaurant, purchase a beer on their behalf and they can enjoy it with you, which I thought was an interesting thing. I could have that wrong, folks. Google it. And on that note, if you check out the show notes, which I try to post after the fact, or you can find at colememo.com, this should be episode 208. You can find any links that I referenced during the show. And also, if you tune in tomorrow at around 4 p.m., I'll be going live with Livy McKay. We've got some other episodes that'll be dropping later this week, and I will be going live, I think, on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week around 4 p.m. One is with that economist that I've got planned, and then another is with Jim Higdon from Cornbread Hemp. He's from Kentucky. He runs a hemp brand. Dank Informer, if you're still listening, I know you've got questions for him. Feel free to drop by. I see you drop questions on his Twitter all the time. So feel free to drop by. I could be sure to ask those questions on your behalf. Genetic Memory Farms says, yeah, this whole situation is a giant steaming pile of BS. Way to paint a picture there, Genetic Memory Farms. They say the industry serves the capitalist corporate interests, the people, and more importantly, the patients will always be victimized. And you should follow Genetic Memory Farms' advice here. They said, tomorrow at 4 p.m., I will set a phone alarm. Thank you. Yeah, be around 4 p.m., 4:05. We should be going live. That rhymed. With Livy McKay from discoveryourcolor.co. We'll be talking about the new THCA marketplace that they are launching. We'll be answering your questions. I know we've already got some questions in, and they're already top of my mind. Where can we see these COAs? Who are they tested by? Where are you getting it from? Those types of things. And yeah, I hope you find value in that episode. I hope you've found value in this episode. Thank you, Two Dope Dudes, for the kind words. And folks, if you're listening right now and haven't already yet, please smash that like button. I'm about to go get some stuff done around the house, and I'm going to listen to the Two Dope Dudes podcast. So if you haven't checked out their show, definitely do that. It's a great one, especially if you're in Illinois. They don't only talk about Illinois though, but they've got some really good informed discussion about the Illinois cannabis market, and you can't beat it. Aaron and Dave are really two dope dudes. So I appreciate you both. And yeah, I think with that, we'll close it out. I think that's it. That's all I had to say. So we'll see you on the next episode, folks. I hope you're enjoying your week so far, and I hope that the rest of the week goes well for you. And yeah, we just had another comment roll in. They said, no offense, Discover Your Color sounds iffy, but I'm absolutely willing to give them a chance and hear the pitch. Yeah. I'm curious, what do you think sounds iffy about it? Just because I'm curious. I didn't know what they meant by Discover Your Color. And then I looked on their website and I saw, oh, there are different strains sorted by color. And it honestly reminds me of how it kind of reminds me of how I've seen GTI market their cannabis. I think they even use the same words. Like I'm looking at energize, focus, calm, and rest. Okay. They say sounds like astrology for cannabis. Oh, and I'm getting Two Dope Dudes said Cresco used to do that. Blue, purple. I think they had a red one. Yeah, yellow. I feel like the reds were like sativas or something like that. But I'm with you here, Genetic Memory Farms, and I totally get it. I think what it is, I don't think you're wrong. I think what it is just trying to make cannabis understandable for people that don't get it. They look at something like Mac 1 and Dante's Inferno, and they're like, what the fuck does that mean? Dante's Inferno sounds kind of crazy. For example, I showed that green crack earlier. Like some people might think like, is this like crack? Like, so I think some people might be put off for it, but I'm not trying to pitch you their solution. What I will say, and this might sound like a pitch, but this is just like from what I understand. From what I understand through my conversations that I've had with Livy in the past, there's not really been a go-to place for tested, safe THCA flower. There are some local people, and maybe I'll show a ad for them in a moment, that I believe they sell THCA flower with COAs, but there's not been like a one-stop shop marketplace like there are for, there's edibles.com, which I actually connected with him. If you're familiar with edible arrangements, I ran into that guy at Benzinga. And now they have edibles.com. It's like this online marketplace where you can go and purchase cannabis products, but they're only edibles. I believe Curaleaf launched an online store, but here again, only edibles. Oh yeah, this is a good point. The Cult of Franklin on Reddit is a really good resource, and yeah, I completely, it's been a while since I've checked that out. But this is supposed to be sort of like those two places that I just described, where it's like a one-stop shop marketplace where you can acquire THCA flower, because a lot of people say there's not a place to find safe, compliant THCA flower, and I believe that's the gap that Livy's trying to fill. But we'll see tomorrow. Bring your questions, bring your comments. Dank Informer, if you're still listening, feel free to call in. I'd love to have you call in, and anybody, you're all welcome to call in. I'll try to open up the phone lines tomorrow so that we can all call in and have a good time. And if you're wondering who is the person that I told, Jesus Christ, I can't speak. If you're wondering who the person is that sells THCA flower, among other things, here's some space for them.
Sun-Drenched Farm is the manifestation of my dream to be able to provide for my family through offering natural alternative forms of healing and wellness, the same forms that I've been so fortunate to experience on my journey in healing from Lyme disease. With in-house cultivation, solventless extraction, and final product manufacturing, we're able to offer the highest quality product that you can find now at sundrenchedfarm.com.
Yup. And Two Dope Dude says Mason. Yeah, that was Mason, and I actually had Mason on the show recently. Two Dope Dudes also says their mom uses that stuff, or their stuff. So that's pretty cool. If you want to check out the episode that I did with Mason, I guess I don't even know what the episode number is. I was just going to try to look it up, and I can't find it. I cannot find it, which is a real fucking shame. Oh, it's episode 197. So if you want to check out that episode with Mason, that's how you do it. And that's available at colememo.com. So if you look up colememo.com, episode 197, we talk about starting a small cannabis business in the state of Illinois. That's what Mason runs. And folks, I mentioned it a few times through this episode. But yeah, check out my mini documentary. Please let me know what you think about it. And if you've not heard of it, if you've not seen it, here is a sneak preview at what you can expect. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st. What should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc.